All right, so now we're looking at section 3, distribution of business services, and trying to figure out or describe the location and clustering of business services and explaining the economic concept or the concept of the economic base. So we want to understand, why do economic services, or specifically business services, where do they exist and why? So we've kind of looked at consumer businesses so far, and now we're transitioning to the business service side and where they're located both, inside the United States and also globally too. So within this, we have to understand that most businesses or most business services are clustered into a small number of large urban settlements. So in particular, they're focused in tightly knit areas. When I say tightly knit, I mean, again, clustered in smaller or in a small number of large areas. Because again, based on population size, access to the most number of clients, things of that nature, that they specialize in specific services. And these are kind of focused in the what we know as global or world cities. These are often areas that are central or centers of information, centers of capital, so they have the money and the resources, and obviously needing more people to work in their supporting services. So, and the number, or kind of how they're ranked, is all based on kind of a mixture of factors defined by alpha, beta, and gamma. And the book really kind of describes it well. But essentially, it comes down to, for the economic ones, the number of big financial institutions or multinational businesses in their headquarters. Okay, political headquarters, so things like international organization, so similar to like the United Nations, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and then just major capital cities. Kind of for the political side. For cultural, it's where the biggest educational and most important educational and research institutions, location of media headquarters, major sports teams, museums, cultural locations, tourist sites. Okay, and then infrastructure, so having international airports, healthcare facilities, major harbors and docks, places like that that are all very much together, kind of combining a number of these things. So what do global cities we have to also offer in terms of the other factors of consumer and public services too? So it's not just about, business, but what else do they offer beyond that that's going to draw in a whole lot of people? So, would we say that Washington, D.C. offers a lot of economic headquarters or financial locations? Is it political? We know it's the capital of the United States. What else is there? What about culture? What types of museums are there? What type of media headquarters, if any, are located there? What types of educational institutions? What about infrastructure beyond their airports? What else is located in DC? Well, what do we know about the Twin Cities? What are the major economic groups or companies that are located here? We've kind of already named a few in the last few chapters. But what about politics? Other than the Twin Cities capital, other than the capital of St. Paul, is there any real political, um, international organizations located here? Or is, St. Paul a major, U.S. capital city? That's something you got to consider. What are the cultural things that draw people here? What about our infrastructure? Okay, so where do we rank on those factors? So the book, combining these things, and again, I'm not exactly sure who did the actual ranking of all this, but I think it fits pretty well. So your alphas are in the red, and again, your biggest alphas, the bigger ones, and your betas and your gammas, that are kind of, again, through this. So if we look predominantly here, and actually, what I want to do, and I don't actually think if I did this in the presentation, we're going to make this bigger. So I'm sorry, I'm doing this kind of on the fly here. Okay, so we want to focus on this, get that to fit, and look at this from the global perspective. Then we'll come back and revisit it by the states. Okay, so the global ones, so New York being very big, London, Paris, Dubai fits in there, Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, Tokyo, Sydney. All right, you got Rio down here, Buenos Aires, Mexico City, again of various sizes, and then you also have, your betas, so Oslo, Stockholm, Jerusalem, Cairo, Rome, Houston, Minneapolis, St. Paul would be considered, one of the betas, while your gammas would be something like, Phoenix, Tunis, Riyadh, or that'd be Mecca. A lot of other places as well. So again, they all vary based on, again, the number of things. And we don't actually have specific things, but if you look, or specific, other locations in there, but we want to go, sorry, I'm revisiting some old pages by accident here. So emphasizing those locations, okay, our betas in the United States, Boston, New York, Philly, DC, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, Dallas, Miami, Atlanta, those make sense. And then you kind of, or sorry, those are your alphas and your betas again. But it looks like we were, yeah, so we're beta, and then like St. Louis, Cleveland, Columbus, Indianapolis, okay, Portland, those are gammas. So again, it's what's the variety, the mixture of all this stuff and the importance as well as the drawing for other people. So kind of talking now, switching towards what are the main business services of more developed countries that we find in less developed countries? What are the things that we see in, again, less developed countries that are owned and operated by, or at least owned by and operated by the more developed countries? And we've kind of talked about this a little bit again in the past with development and industry too. So the two types of businesses from more developed countries that we typically find in less developed, because remember, less developed have their own business services, period. Just like everyone else, we find everyone has those 5 types of economic activities. But what are things we find predominantly in these countries that are owned and run by transnational or multinational corporations? So we find offshore financial services. So where companies go to evade taxes or pay lower taxes from their home country by moving their headquarters there. So think Cayman Islands. Think moving Covidien, which was I don't remember if it was an American company or one that partnered up with Covidien. I don't remember the exact story, but essentially they moved their headquarters to, I believe, Ireland to, again, in many cases they said it's more affordable. Well, so you're probably paying less taxes because your headquarters is not in the United States. So this allows for the privacy of individuals and businesses who don't want to disclose all or part of their income and save more money, again, in relation to taxes. And so this is, again, 2014, 2015 statistics. The U.S. loses an estimated $70 billion a year in places that they don't have to pay as many taxes or pay any at all because their headquarters, or they do a lot of their activities abroad, and that way they don't have to actually show that money to the U.S. government. So we're losing $70 billion a year from our businesses on that end. That would be pumped back into the American economy, but it's not. So again, Cayman Islands and Panama being kind of a recent one with the Panama Papers back in 2015 or 16. Then we have a video in here. We're not watching it, but it's something if you want to revisit, you can. So the other one is the business process outsourcing. So remember, we defined outsourcing as jobs that have been moved abroad. This connects back to the new International Division of Labor, where we're finding jobs that we could have done in the United States that have now been outsourced to other parts of the globe. And so this is where we find the business processing. So again, the more that back office jobs, which we did again talk about in the last chapter. So things like payroll work, insurance claims, customer service, and call centers in particular. Again, in areas where they have a lot of English speakers or have like usually a colonial legacy or colonial ties, hence why there's so many English speakers there. And that way they can do this again for cheaper than you'd find again in the United States or other parts of the developed world or considered developed world, because you typically have to pay them a higher salary in the United States, Great Britain, France. But if you can move that stuff abroad, you don't have to pay your workers as much. So again, even though it's being done in a different part of the globe, it becomes cheaper again because you don't have to pay your workers as much. And a lot of the stuff is done digitally now. So again, that lessens your cost in terms of paying your workers per hour in the US. All right. So again, that's the effect of the telecommunications too. And also, as we said in the last chapter, a lot of this stuff is also becoming more automated, so being done more by computers. Okay. So again, there's our other two pieces: New International Division of Labor and Wages, and the ability to speak English. So this ties into the final piece of the economic stuff. Okay, is the base of the settlements, economic base, where settlements get their money and how their population grows from it. Okay, so we have two types of industries, basic and non-basic. Okay, and you would think that the basic and non-basic would actually be defined differently. You would think they're reversed, they're not. So basic industry is one that sells their products and services primarily to those who live outside of the settlement. So if we're using Inver Grove Heights as our example, basic industries in Inver Grove do not necessarily focus their products or services to the Inver Grove Heights people. They focus it beyond the borders of the city or even the state or the region. Okay. Non-basic are ones whose consumers live in that same settlement. So predominantly you're serving people in Inver Grove with your non-basic industries or services. And again, one would think that these would be flipped. They're not. Okay. So one would consider which one would make the most money. Ones that sell their products outside of the area where their consumers are found or where they're based, or one where their consumers are located in. Okay. And the answer actually ends up being the basic one brings in the most money, or considered the most important economically. Why is that? Well, They bring in the money, businesses, and new people into the local economy because they are draw factors. They're bringing in more people because you're opening up these new places that are going to need to bring in people to work in said industries. All right. So rather than just kind of recirculating the money with a non-basic industry, again, we'll kind of look at examples of that here. These bring in new money from outside. Okay. So, and what they do with this when they bring in that money is then that's used to pay for more non-basic industries and jobs as more and more people are now being brought into the area. All right. So the non-basic industries, okay, that just kind of recirculate the money, okay, as more people are moving in, banks, schools, grocery stores, restaurants, these are things that are there to support the people already living in the area, okay? You don't build a Target in Inver Grove Heights and assume that you're going to draw in so many workers because there's a Target there. No, you build the Target because there's now an economic base that can now support the Target. There's a minimum threshold in order to have a big box store like Target around, and that doesn't bring in more people. The Target exists because there's already people around the area to support it. All right. So this also, because with basic industries, attract more workers and their families, making it more diverse. And this relates to the idea of the coolness index that the book talks about. So consider where are talented people going because they want more culture, there's more social draws, and it's not just related to economics. So what's considered, where are the cool, hip places to live? And again, the pandemic is kind of having an opposite effect on that because people can now live further away, telecommute, do their jobs online, and so they don't have to actually live in big cities. They can go live in any part of the world almost as long as they have internet access to do their jobs, which I think is very interesting. We'll see how that plays out because, again, that means that this actually, you don't have to have people in town working in your business and be connected. So you could be hired by a company in Inver Grove Heights, but you could be, if it's telecommunications, you could be living in Duluth, or you could be living, down in Mankato or in small town Iowa. You could be living in China if you have internet access. All right. So, and here's again the thing: it's less likely that with your non-basic industries are going to draw in more workers and build new industries. That's not really going to happen. Okay, because the non-basic ones are servicing the people already here. Okay, the basic ones are bringing in more people. So, examples of the economic base. Okay, think about the basic industries. What are the things that U.S. elements specialize in? And most of them specialize in one or two, maybe three specific types of industries. Now, again, obviously you have a variety of things, but what are the things that each region is known for? Okay. What, again, going back to Minneapolis, St. Paul, what are the big things that we are known for that draw in a lot of workers, that draw in people to the Twin Cities? What's something that draws in Rochester, Minnesota? What draws people to Seattle or to Houston, okay, or to Silicon Valley? All right, what are the things that bring in people as basic industries that they are going to be selling beyond their own borders? All right, because those are the things that are going to help stimulate the local economy even more by bringing in money from the outside. And that's really, really important to understand. So again, kind of the main ideas here, some of the main ideas, okay. If you look down here, personal services down in Rochester. So again, that comes back to healthcare, and so that's a very large part of the stuff. So again, other types of basic services. So again, types of jobs in Silicon Valley. Manufacturing is a type of basic service that, again, is going to bring in a lot of people, a lot of workers. You think about financial, major financial institutions, not just banks, but like big stock and hedge fund people. Okay, those are going to be really, really big. Sports teams going to bring in, but again, that's to service a very large area. So again, it plays off to what can we focus on do really, really well in this part of the country that's going to bring in a lot of people to then support the more local industries. So, and then there's kind of our video on the Panama Papers. And that just kind of leaves talking about the switch from rural to urban settlements to kind of talk about in the final section in 12.4, which we've kind of already revisited with the idea of urbanization in the past, but again, revisiting and focusing on it at this point now. So that's going to be something we're going to do in the next video, or the final video of the chapter.